I think I finally understand why this sort of clean aesthetic pisses me off so much. And you know the type that it really starts off with these very white gray buildings and furniture and where everything seems very like clean and organized. And not that there's anything wrong with cleanliness and organization, but when you really see these people that really like these type of things and that in a lot of ways make it their whole personality, this sort of clean aesthetic, because then it extends beyond just the architecture and the kitchen and the million and one shelves they have for different things to put things, and it really goes on to how they dress and how they act and how they portray themselves, and it is a way that portrays yourself, your environment, the things you interact with, very polished, too polished. It almost seems like when a picture has been edited too much and the skin of the person is too smooth, well, you know it's not real. You know that no matter how realistic it seems, no matter how pretty it looks, you know it's not real. You've never seen anyone like that. The life you see through your own eyes has never been like that. And even the people that try to be like that and, being too organized, too clean and all these things. And if you do really love that, go ahead. But those are not the people I'm trying to talk about here. It's the ones that really make it that their personality almost by force, and they show it on Instagram and they portray themselves in a certain way. It's almost like, first of all, they cannot let go of control. And these are the type of people that with their family, their closest ones, if you drop a crumb out of place, they're going to scream at you and you got to clean and it's out of not how I want. And then with others, it's hiding that bad side and just showing everything very perfect on Instagram. Maybe, you fucked it up the whole house and your family's upset at you, but now you can show your fridge with every Oreo in a separate container and everything. It looks so perfect. Your life's so perfect and white and clean. And why it upsets me so much is because this is, and I don't know if it's the right word, antithetical, opposite to what it's like to live a good life. If things are not a little rough around the edges, if there's no, sometimes a little bit more salt on your meal in a certain part than on the other, if there's no, when you're listening to music, sometimes you can hear the voice of the singer cracking with emotion, or the fingers sliding through the chords of the guitar, if everything is very, very auto-tuned all the time and very, it has been post-processed, edited to be smooth. If everything is always very smooth, you lose, in my opinion, the best parts of life, which are its roughness. It's the thing that makes you feel the little differences in texture and feeling and even in the way you observe. And if we look at comparing with the example here, a house that's very this clean aesthetic to an older house with a lot of taste, you will see that there's so much detail in the furniture of the way the walls are painted, the way things are organized. There's personality, there's what I would call here life to it, there's character to it, there's taste, there's a punch, there's a certain flavor that the other one simply lacks, and it sacrifices that in order to be a bit more clean, a bit more organized. But I think we forget that we may be very intelligent and we may be very capable of doing these clean, organized things, but we are at our core part of the natural process. We are flesh and blood. And I say that because if you look at the natural process of anything, of, I don't know, a worm feeding a bird or these types of things, if you look very closely, they are very rough and very violent sometimes and very dirty sometimes as well. If you just observe, without context, it would be like, oh, this seems very imperfect. It would almost seem that we should improve this somehow. But then when you look at it in the whole context of it, of how everything synergizes with everything else, from how these animals interact with the sun, with the oxygen, with the gravity, all of these things in a very natural sense, you see just how perfect it is. And you see how the roughness it has on its edges is absolutely perfect. It is the way it should be. And if we were to attempt to create something like that from scratch, we wouldn't even know where to start. It would be, obviously we're part of this world, but it would be like, okay, start creating an atom. Good luck with that. And the way everything else, from this interacts with everything else. And even sometimes if you see something like a video game that is very well done, like Skyrim, for example, where it feels like there's this richness to the world and this depth and all that, That pales in comparison. That is like there will be a grain of sand in the complexity of the actual world we live in, the natural world we live in. And tying all of this together, because it seems like I'm going to a lot of places, to attempt to have such a grasp on it and make it our way, control it. It has to be disorganized and this clean, and it can't ever be not perfect. And I can't ever portray myself as not perfect. And I always gotta be composed and perfect and look nice and say the nice things and be correct. And it is so suffocating that one will not be able to live. Because to live properly, as I see it, it has to be in a way that it is aligned with what we see from everything else that surrounds us. The thing, especially the things that we have not put our hands in, we have not altered because we cannot. And we'll see that they have that roughness and they have that. It's almost impossible to describe because it can only be experienced and observed and felt. But you know what I'm talking about. I think it's impossible not to know that. And now one may say here to me, first of all, that why do you care so much about that? Who cares? Can't people just do what they want? Well, of course they can. And this is, perhaps it's me ranting a bit too much and being a bit too unreasonable, because there's nothing wrong with being clean, of course, and keeping things clean and organized at all. And a lot of, you even see here me, I have things unorganized. Sometimes perhaps you could call a bit of envy that I wish I was a bit more in that way, that I could keep things a bit more clean, a bit more organized. And there's a lot of value in that. I want to make sure of that. There's a lot of value if you are that type of person. You do make that effort. It does make things more comfortable, more pleasant, and no doubt about it. But we have to know when to stop doing those things, and we have to know when they reach their limit. Because if we look at, and I'm circling a bit, but when we look at the things, especially if I think about some of the experiences that mark me the most and that feel the most, that I have the best memories of, or I had the best experiences with, they never were perfect. They never were just ultra smooth and clean and organized and everything, every hour's planned, and at 7 a.m. we do this, and then at 9 a.m. this, and it was the opposite. It just, things flow, you went in the flow, and sometimes it seemed that it was not going to work, but then it worked, and then it just went with the flow of life. And I think a lot of times with the world we live in, that is so about sharing things, and about not only sharing, but sharing with the intent of giving a certain perception of ourselves. I'm very organized, I'm very rich, I'm very fit, I'm very all of these things, that we end up having the experiences, and we end up doing such an effort to control everything, to portray ourselves in a perfect light, and to almost smooth out all the rough edges we may have, so that any potential defect we have, any potential wrong that we have about ourselves, that we do whatever, that we're gonna erase that, the perception of it at least, and show a very perfect existence. And then we all know that, our existence is not perfect. But then if I look at John's existence on Instagram, it seems like everything's perfect. If I'm a bit more naive, I may be led to think that I just have it all wrong. I'm wrong, I'm fucked up, I just don't understand life. He has it all right, he's always disciplined, he always is grinding, he's always perfect, has all these things, but no one is like that. It's very easy to portray yourself in a certain light. It's very easy to give an image of something that is fake. And a lot of people that you do see online, and I know this is all over the place, but we're here already. A lot of the people you see online portraying themselves in a certain light, that they say they work 16 hours per day, but that they also have time to be with their kids, and they also have time to go to the gym twice per day, and they also have time for hobbies, and they also have time for rest. It doesn't make sense logically, does it? It doesn't. And the way it doesn't, because it's reality is not as it's being shared and portrayed. It's not like that. So many people exaggerate, so many people lie, so many people do and say things because they want to portray a certain image, because, well, there's a certain reward for it. Maybe they're trying to sell something, maybe they're trying to get likes, maybe they're trying to just be better, feel better than those around them. It's, at the end of the day, we all, no matter how much a person develops and improves and gets fit and rich and all that, if even those things matter for the case, we are never perfect. No one is ever perfect. And knowing that and keeping that in mind, I think it should translate to how we live, to not fall into the trap of connecting all the way at the beginning, to want to live lives that are just very clean and perfect and smooth around the edges, because we're just going to be deceiving ourselves. And even if we achieve that, such an existence, we're going to realize that it's a sterile existence with no flavor, no personality, no nothing.